books in my spare time where the symbolism is in the color of the main character's curtains.
She seriously could have loved books as much as I do if it weren't for the stupid school system.
Actually, the ironic part is maybe a year or so later I decided to restart the same book and give it another shot on my own terms, and I finished it in 2 days. It was pretty good.
See? She could have loved reading.
Moon and the Morphine Mystery. I was gonna say you should recommend a good book I should give a try, but I took a second to think about if I would actually try to read any suggestions, and being real with myself, the answer is no.
So, I really like reading a lot. I guess I'm gonna talk about it. Unfortunately, I don't have that perfect poetic life that Jaden describes, though. I don't really have plants, just some dead ones. And if I did have plants, I still don't have that crisp autumn light, because where I live, autumn is basically spring, and spring is the closest we get to winter, and all the leaves fall then. This is a bit exaggerated, but I'm getting off topic. I do like tea, though. I just make it in a teapot instead of a Keurig, despite the fact that we do own one, but it's like only for when company is over. Oh, and we also have cats, but I'm also allergic to them. I think I really got hooked into books and reading and stuff when I was about 7 or 8 years old. Before that, my mom taught me how to read using Bob books. They're really small, like 5 words a page at most, and nothing really happened in them. I remember being unimpressed with them for the most part, but I still read them because that was impressive for us 5-year-olds. Eventually I moved on to Fancy Nancy books, and they were a bit better because they had nice pictures and better stories. They were cute. I liked them, but I wasn't quite hooked yet. I think after that, I remember my mom reading me and my sisters the first 2 books in the Little House on the Prairie. I ended up reading the rest of those by myself, and by then I was starting to really like it. But there was one very defining moment in my reading career that cemented loving books right into my core. This book was the most amazing thing for 8-year-old me. It was also the first book I read that made me cry. And what is this super amazing book, you may be asking? It is The Little Princess. Okay, but in all honesty, I don't usually recommend this book to people unless they've already read and enjoyed other classic books like Little House on the Prairie and The Secret Garden and stuff. Because if you don't like reading books like that, you're really not going to care about this little princess who changed my life forever and defined my entire personality. I'm not going to say too much about the book in case some of you want to read it, but it's about this girl named Sarah Crew, and her dad is super rich and loves her a ton, and they have a super great bond. But Sarah has to go away to a small boarding school in England, so they have to part, and it's sad, but it's not too sad because the book's only just getting started. So you get to know Sarah, and she has a huge imagination and is always making and telling stories. She also talks to her doll Emily and treats her like a person because she imagines that Emily is secretly alive and can hear her. In school, everyone is in awe and baffled about how she gets anything she wants and wears super fancy clothes and has 2 rooms all for herself just because her dad spoils her so much. One of the most unrealistic things about the book is how Sarah doesn't act very spoiled at all. She's kind, and she sticks up for people who are being mistreated, like Ermengarde and Becky. One of the main things about her is that despite the fact that she's not a real princess, she always acts the way she thinks a princess should behave. Even when all her special treatment is taken away and she's treated like dirt, worse than dirt, she still behaves like a princess. She has a few ups and downs. She does get impatient and prideful sometimes, and at least once she blew up at Lavinia for being a jerk. But that's all I'm going to say on it for now. I could go on and on about how the little princess literally changed my life, but that would probably be boring. So, do you want to know what books I didn't like? 2 specific books come to mind when I was writing the script. First up, The Scarlet Letter. I bet some of you know this book. I've heard that a lot of people had to read this for English classes. I didn't. I just found it on my Kindle and went like, oh hey, I like some classic books, why don't I try this one? Welp, never mind then. So yeah, got through a few pages and then stopped and never picked it up again. Sorry, I guess. But what was I supposed to do? Just read it? when I don't have to. The other book I don't remember the name of, but it was by Edgar Allan Poe. See, I had to do this presentation on Mr. Poe when I was about 11. I ended up making the entire thing without reading a single one of his books. But later my mom was like, nah, you gotta read something by him if you're gonna do a presentation on him. I don't know which book of Mr. Poe's we got, but it was kind of barely readable. To this day, I have never read another Edgar Allan Poe book. Well, I did listen to an audiobook for The Telltale Heart, and I have seen summaries of other books he's done, but that book in particular, about some sailor or something, was boring, and I hated that I had to finish it for my presentation. You know, I actually still have that presentation, but I can't find the notes for it anywhere, and 11-year-old me was not very good at making presentations, and it's really weird and kind of incomprehensible a little bit. I mean, just look at this. Moving on now. You know, while writing this, I realized it sounds kind of like I only read those old classic books, and that is very false. I read lots of different things. I tend to gravitate more towards fantasy stuff, but I've also enjoyed plenty of other genres, like some cool sci-fi books, mysteries, and also a few creepier ones. I don't really like reading super horror-y stuff, though. I'd prefer not to have nightmares, thank you very much. There is only one genre that I tend to avoid, and that is romance. Like, I'm fine with romance being a subplot. There's plenty of books I've read with really cool worlds and settings and cool character arcs and plots, and they happen to have really well-written romance character arcs in there too that I enjoyed. But a book only about romance? That's not really what I'm here for. No thanks, I'm good. That sounds really boring. Moving on now. Last year, about a month after the school year started, in July by the way, because we're homeschoolers and we can start it whenever we want, my mom went and told me and my siblings that we had to read one new book each month and write down all the books we'd read that year on a list. In past years, we've done something similar, so I wasn't really fazed, but I guess this time it was a little more enforced. But you know what? I got a bit cocky. I decided one new book each month wasn't going to cut it for me. Instead, I was going to double it. Only thing was, we were already a month in, and the month before I'd only read one new book, so I decided I'd just read 3 in one of the months. But it turns out, I wasn't the super cool reading master I thought I was. I kind of ended up sort of burning myself out. See, look, here you can see that one book from June from before I started my commitment. Here in November, you can see where I remedied that by reading a 3rd book. Only problem was that the very next month I was very unmotivated to read and nearly missed the deadline. I ended up resorting to a quick audiobook to keep me on time. Then came January, and I ended up reading 3 books again, not because I had to, but because I'd gotten really sucked into a book series and couldn't stop myself from reading more. February I continued the series, and in March I finished the last one, and I was super burnt out over that emotional roller coaster and didn't manage to read anything else that month. Come April, and I'm getting very worried because that means I have to read another 3 books in either April or May. I ended up resorting to another short audiobook to meet my deadline. And then May came and went without me reading a single book. The end. So I guess the moral of the story is don't get cocky and try to read 24 new books in a year. And also, homeschooling is awesome because you can start and end school whenever you want. Well, we can't, but our parents can. But it's not exactly as simple as that. There's still rules and yearly evaluations, and I'm probably going to do a video about homeschooling at some point, so I'll tell you about it then. Oh my goodness, this video was so long and I still didn't get to talk about all the stuff I wanted to somehow. Who knew I had so much to say about reading? Like, I might even actually make a part 2 of this video at some point, not immediately after this. Like, I'll do something else in the meantime. Okay, I'm done now. See ya!